Because it's not about what's true. It's not about what's true to these people. It's about their narrative. How's it going, everybody? So I'm still here in Seoul, South Korea, and we've been looking into some interesting stories, abandoned theme parks and hospitals. We went to a dog cafe. The reality is, as it pertains to the tensions between the North and the South, we hear this stuff in the media, but for most people here, it's not that big a deal. It's just same old, same old. I've heard from some expats who have said that it's not really that scary. Some people get scared, but for the most part, not much. And the locals who said basically the same thing. So, this video is going to be about something different. It's going to be about partisan politics. So, let's start by talking about media. So, I did this video before where I talked about how after Portland, a news organization accused me, they called me flat out an alt-right journalist, and they put journalist in quotes. Whatever, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a dig at my work or something. And so, I called them. And the writer apologized and said, oh no, that wasn't supposed to be in there, and they removed it. But they would not call me a journalist. Apparently he said, oh, my editor is adamant or something. I don't know exactly what he was on about, but he said they're going to call me a digital media producer. So they call me a news producer and a digital media producer. Right. I actually have awards for journalism and have been featured for my work in journalism, but sure, don't let that get in the way of your narrative. Why is it so important for them to call me alt-right when I'm clearly not right-wing? It's very strange. Well, earlier today, or actually I don't know what day it is, I'm in Korea, I'm on the other side of the planet from most people in New York. Dave Rubin, the classic liberal, formerly of the Young Turks, was called far-right. An article in Mother Jones called him far-right and put him in the same bracket as Baked Alaska and Cernovich and personalities like that, like Kyle Chapman. Dave was pissed. If you go on Twitter, you can see this, and he's going, he's tweeting at these people saying you have to retract this. This is libelous. It is not true, and it isn't true. Dave is a gay married, pro-choice, pro-pot legalization, pro-single-payer healthcare. These are left-wing positions, but they're calling him far-right. So the question then becomes, they did it to me, they do it to Dave, they've done it to other people. Why are journalists writing stories accusing people who are clearly not right-wing of being right-wing? I've said this before too, it's not about whether or not you believe a certain policy issue. It's about how you stand in social issues, which is getting really weird. Dave Rubin still is socially liberal. But because he associates, because he interviews, this is the scary part, simply because he interviews many conservatives, they call him far right. Now, you can be sympathetic, you can interview somebody, you can be wrong about where someone stands politically, and still not hold conservative points of view. And this is the big problem. They tell me that, oh, Tim, the guy on the phone from the Portland thing said, I don't go out and have drinks with the people I'm covering. And I'm like, well, are you going to call Hunter S. Thompson a Hell's Angel for simply hanging out with them? I mean, the guy did drugs with a lot of these people. And, in 2011, I actually slept at Occupy Wall Street. Slept in the park, hung out with people, broke bread, and better understood them. And I was praised for that. For 2 months, sleeping on and off in a park. Sometimes I'd go to like some of the occupiers' houses even and crash at their places. And they didn't tell me I was aligned with their point of view or their politics. They said, wow, Tim did this immersion journalism. He really got in there and learned what these people thought. And I won an award for it. And I was featured in magazines for it. And they cheered for me. Now, people are saying simply because I had dinner, because I had chicken wings with Trump supporters, I am conservative. And because Dave Rubin interviews conservatives, he himself is conservative. This is absolutely crazy, and it's dangerous. And I'll tell you why it's dangerous. We just saw a man bring a rifle and shoot at politicians. Now we're hearing that someone is sending white powder envelopes to Republicans in I think Georgia it was. The violence is escalating. The tensions are escalating between both sides. If people are going to arbitrarily start calling people like me or Dave Rubin journalists, media personalities who are clearly left, if they're going to start saying we're right-wing, they're going to make us targets for this extremism, for this violence. After Portland, because people were saying, oh, Tim, you're all right, and things like that, I took a political compass test. And guess what? I'm left libertarian. I am, so it's this authoritarian, libertarian, and left and right. I actually fall slightly left of center and towards libertarian, meaning I don't believe in authoritarian systems. I think people have, you don't have a right to use force against someone else to make them do something. But as it pertains to the economy, I believe in a little bit more so, government regulation type stuff. Not an extreme point of view. I'm center left. I'm not like far left. So I'm still open to concepts of like the free market and things like that. But I personally do feel like there is some necessity as it pertains to regulation. I don't think any of that matters, and I never talk about that because it shouldn't matter. All that should matter is, am I being fair to my subjects and to the story? Am I representing them accurately? I am not going to make up things or assume things or just call someone far left or far right. No, I'm going to go talk to them and let them say their piece. That's how we develop understanding, it's how we progress, how we grow. Now we're seeing this violence. And we're seeing people on the right and on the left start to, justify isn't the right word. Maybe ignore, maybe, I don't know what the right word is for it. But I've seen people post on Twitter from the right saying, well, the left is getting violent, we have to defend ourselves. And the left has been saying the same thing for a long time. We have had a lot of terror attacks in this country, relatively, that have come from people who are considered right-wing. And now we're seeing an escalation in the violence from the left. Is there really this much violence coming from the left? Honestly, it's not that much from either side. We really are in this fringe bubble. Antifa is not a very large group, but they are doing crazy things. The bike lock basher is one of the craziest examples of, this guy was trying to kill people in Berkeley. If you're not familiar, this guy in Berkeley, he was wearing black mask and a bike lock and he was hitting people over the head. I think most people who watch my channel are familiar with it. But now we saw a Bernie Sanders volunteer, a supporter, anti-Trump, go out with a rifle and start shooting people. The scary thing about this guy is that his views are considered kind of mainstream. Bernie Sanders was a very, very popular candidate, and a lot of people support him. A lot of the people who are committing acts of violence in the name of the left are Bernie Sanders supporters. I've talked about this over a year ago. I was going and covering these Trump rallies where the violence was breaking out, and what did I see? It was people who are more likely to be voting for Bernie. And it could just be because they were younger, I don't know, but we definitely see this kind of violence, and the rhetoric is escalating. I guess to wrap this into one idea, what is so scary is that people think they're moderate when they're not. I had a conversation with a far left authoritarian activist, okay? This is where Stalin is. And this person told me they were moderate. This is seriously, somebody who told me they believed Antifa was justified in using violence against those they disagree with to establish a political order, told me they were moderate. That Trump needs to be tried for treason and removed from power, moderate. And I tried explaining to them, the average person in this country is talking about the latest, the upcoming season of Game of Thrones. They're talking about the Emmys, Katy Perry. They're trying to figure out what kind of tacos they're going to eat tonight. They're not talking about overthrowing the government. That is not a moderate view. But these people believe they are. So what ends up happening is another phenomenon I've talked about is that journalists tend to live in big cities. Cities tend to be progressive and liberal, so media outlets tend to hire people who are progressive and liberal, and these people view anybody to the right of them as far right, when they're not. And then what ends up happening is you hear these crazy stories about some of these people being Nazi, white supremacists, and it's just not true. How do you combat that then? When you look at the case of, say, Cassandra Fairbanks suing Emma Roller. Emma Roller said that this was a white supremacy hand gesture, and that Cassandra Fairbanks was making it, a white supremacy hand gesture in the White House, which she wasn't. It's like a Trump meme, troll meme kind of. What do you do? How do you fight back? When a news outlet says I'm alt-right and I'm not, what do? I call them, they correct it, but they still don't call me a journalist. They say I'm sympathetic to Trump supporters. I told them after they said, I'm on the phone with this guy, and he said, I said, hey, you also called me sympathetic. And he's like, yeah, we're going to leave that in. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine, so long as you also put that I've been sympathetic towards refugees and Black Lives Matter and basically everybody that I've covered. And no, of course not. Because it's not about what's true. It's not about what's true to these people. It's about their narrative. You go to my YouTube page, which you're on right now. You look at the videos I've done. In my documentary section, what do I have? Adventure stories. I went to Fukushima and talked about radiation. I went to an arms dealer in Brazil. A story about people fighting police brutality. A story about 2 refugee brothers who were separated by the war. Ferguson, a documentary I did, an hour-long look at the racism in Ferguson, all sympathetic towards these groups. These people don't care about what's true. They simply want to just say that I'm either not a journalist or I'm alt-right, simply for talking with people who are conservative. It's also scary when you see people like Luke Rudkowski from We Are Change getting splashed with urine, getting people going up to him and blowing air horns in his face or swinging at him. And Luke is also just a strange, hippie, liberal, crystal-wearing guy that they're accusing of being alt-right. Basically, if you don't support the mainstream narrative, if you question the mainstream narrative, you are alt-right. And that's dangerous, especially when you've got people dressing up in all black going on bashing people over the skull, and now a guy going out with a rifle and shooting some politicians. I've talked about how I didn't know if I was going to continue covering these, or actually I flat out said I didn't want to cover this partisan violence anymore, but I've kind of realized something. Maybe not necessarily realized something, but with this white powder incident, with this shooting incident, this is becoming probably one of the most important stories in America. The escalation of violence between the left and the right. And I think, while I don't necessarily want to go to little free speech events that probably are just riot porn, I'm going to start looking at these issues and following them a little bit more closely and see if I can do more in-depth interviews to try and figure out what the hell's going on. Because I think this is going to get worse, and that's what scares me. But what do you think? I mean, I've asked a question before. I've asked, is it going to get worse? And then it's gotten worse. So comment below. Share your thoughts. If you like the video, click the like button. Subscribe for new videos every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm in Korea, and I'll be heading back to LA in just a couple days. So stay tuned. I'll see y'all tomorrow.